He just sent a serious message as Islanders hockey finally returned, with the Islanders facing the Philadelphia Flyers for the first game of the preseason, and there were several major standouts for the Islanders, and we're going to discuss them on this episode of Islanders Digest. And when I say standouts, we're talking about new players, young players. We're not going to be focusing on guys like Bo Horvat and Matt Barzal, although I will say it was very good to see Matt Barzal skating and really looking like his old self. If we hadn't been talking about this injury all summer, I might have forgotten he even missed the end of the season. That's how comfortable he looked on his skates, which is absolutely perfect. But let's talk about the standouts, the new players to the Islanders. And frankly, I think even if we're talking about everybody in general, I still think Mathew Schaefer was perhaps the biggest standout in this game. He was so impressive, and I was so amazed to see how his speed translated against NHL caliber players. Yes, we've seen how fast he is against players his age, but just seeing how much he still stands out in the NHL is incredibly impressive and encouraging for the New York Islanders. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say Mathew Schaefer's game was perfect. He made quite a few mistakes, but the skills were clearly there. The foundation of a stellar NHL caliber defenseman is there. And I think the most important part is I think it's there now. This is not a thing where we got a peek at Mathew Schaefer, and in a few years, this is going to be a really effective player. It's clear to me after watching him play this preseason game, and we're going to have to see how the rest of the preseason progresses. But it's clear this is a player who does not have much to learn at any other level. He is ready to play in the NHL. And my biggest doubt when it came to whether Schaefer was NHL ready was if putting him in the NHL would limit his potential offensive development. Watching that game, it's clear he's able to produce offense at the NHL level. While it's not going to be perfect, it's clear he can put up points. And the question more is the defense going to be well-rounded? How long that's going to take? We're going to discuss in more detail on this episode of Islanders Digest, along with some other players. We did have an injury scare to Aitcheson. We're going to talk about how he's doing, what's the plan for him next, and also Maxim Tsyplakov, who I think there is more division on how he looks, and I'll tell you what I saw in his game. But really quickly, before we dive in, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Appreciate your support. We are on the road to 2,000 subscribers before the Islanders season begins. That is on October 7th, and I can't wait. Although honestly, I am super excited with Islanders hockey right now. Typically, the preseason does not matter all that much. The score definitely does not matter. But with all the rookies the Islanders have and the young players who are trying to show what they can do, this is a really exciting preseason for the Islanders. And now, typically in the preseason, we would not expect to see the guys we saw in the last game, and that would make the next game less exciting since, Mathew Schaefer will likely not play in that game. I can be wrong there. But with this preseason, the next game, we're likely going to get our first look at Callum Ritchie. So there's still plenty to stay tuned. The Islanders did lose 3-2 for the Flyers. If there was anything negative about the way they lost, it's the fact they blew a lead in the last minute, like they did a lot last season. And then it was a 11-round shootout. So in that case, I wasn't upset about the shootout loss at all. In fact, by the end of the shootout, I was just waiting for the game to end, especially when the high-profile players were gone and we were mostly focusing on the shooters, who likely, some of them won't even be making the AHL. Definitely took a bit longer than you would have liked to see, but I think there was a lot of good for the Islanders in general in this game. We're not going to focus too much on the way they played in the game, but I was impressed with the penalty kill, and I am a little concerned about the power play early on. There was only one practice, which is why we're not going to spend this entire time discussing the power play, but if this does not get better, it's going to be an issue going into the season. Fortunately, one thing that might help the power play right away, which is definitely not something I completely expected, is Mathew Schaefer. Now, Cam Robinson, if you don't know, he works at Elite Prospects, and he is an insider who also knows so much about young players. When it comes to prospects, he is who you want to get your news from. And he said he got a text from a team side source that said, watching Mathew Schaefer's preseason debut might be a top pair guy right out of the box. Now, I want to push back on this a little bit just because of the responsibilities of a top pair guy. In terms of the offense, Mathew Schaefer did look like a top pair guy yesterday. The speed was absolutely incredible. What took me off guard was how good the puck handling was as well. Another skill I'm noticing really early watching Mathew Schaefer is how good he is at getting pucks on net. Now, a big criticism of him in his draft year was his shot. He doesn't have this super powerful shot. And I will say his shooting does look better. I think he's improved it during this offseason. But one thing not enough people talk about when they talk about defensemen and shots is the most important thing is not how hard your shot is, it's if you're able to get it on net consistently. And Schaefer has shown early on with his shiftiness, he is very good at getting the puck to the net, which is the most important part. We all raved about Ryan Pulock and how hard his shot is for years. Guess what? It does not help if he cannot get it on net consistently. And Schaefer showed in this first game that he is able to get that shot on net consistently. He got an assist as a result, and I really like the way he moves around the defensive zone. In addition, that back check he had in the overtime 3-on-3, he was in the offensive zone. I believe it was Michkov on the Flyers got a breakaway, and Schaefer chased him all the way down. The speed is electric, and what's really exciting about Schaefer is having that speed. He's going to be able to get on the rush with Mathew Barzal, with Bo Horvat, provide more offense, while also be able to get back. And this is a big issue the Islanders have had with players such as Tony DeAngelo and Noah Dobson last season. They do attack on the rush, but when the Islanders lose the puck, when the rush doesn't work the way they want it to, they can't get back. It is clear that is not going to be an issue with Schaefer. He does have to work a bit on defensive positioning, which is definitely something that's going to hold him back in the beginning of the season. I do believe to start the year, Schaefer should stay on the third pair with Scott Mayfield. But as the season goes on, I can really see him elevating up the Islanders lineup. And by the end of the season, I think it's really hard to imagine a year where Adam Pelech is and Alex Romanov are still getting more time than Mathew Schaefer. Just the way he's able to playing 24 minutes in his first NHL preseason game. Very impressed with his play. And again, he was noticeable every time he took the ice. Now, another defenseman who was very noticeable for the New York Islanders, in my opinion, was Aitcheson. Aitcheson looked very good, and I was also impressed with, while he was not as noticeable, you had to really look for him on the ice. I really liked how composed he is on the offensive side of the zone. He was embracing physical contact, obviously. Now, he did get injured in this game, which really soured my mood watching this game. I was miserable. As exciting as it was to watch Mathew Schaefer, the second Aitcheson went down, I was expecting the worst. The hit looked really bad. I don't know if it was necessarily very dirty, but it's not what you want to see in a hit. Tony DeAngelo said he thought it was clean. I think it probably should have been at least a 2-minute penalty. But the important thing here is that Aitcheson is fine. Patrick Waugh said he was okay. He's day-to-day. And it's very notable that the Islanders did not loan him back to his CHL team, because this is hinting, as Stefan Rosner is saying, that Aitcheson is likely going to get a second preseason game, which is really exciting. One, I felt like he earned it. The way he also showed he's able to get pucks on the net, really walk the blue line. I was really impressed with his offensive game. I knew what we were going to get in terms of physicality. We all know that's already there. Well, he can improve it a little more, and he is going to have to learn to be more careful when he is skating up the ice. I was impressed with his offensive side of his game, and I think now that we know that this is not a major injury, I think this is a good lesson to take a hit like this and learn to be more aware of what's happening on the ice. Now, that is not a common hit you'll see. Noah Juliuson is a player clearly trying to make a big impression to try to make the Flyers, but still, you have to keep your head up, and considering that he was not majorly hurt, this is a good way to learn that lesson, trying to take some sort of positive. But before he was hurt, he looked really good. In addition, Stefan Rosser mentions that while Aitcheson was not cut, other players were cut. We're going to go through these players now. Some people were surprised and very upset on Twitter that Luca Romano got cut because he had that goal in the shootout. Looked really silky, and I'm really impressed with Luca Romano's skating. Didn't quite stand out the way others players did, but when you were looking at him, I liked what I saw. But Luca Romano was not going to make the Islanders. Thomas Poltine was not going to make the Islanders either. It was good to have them play a preseason game, but keep in mind, too, the OHL season is starting up now. You want them to be on their teams right away to make sure they get the right spot in their lineup. this was the right call for the Islanders to send them down so they can also focus a bit more on the players who are still here. Now, the one player I am a bit upset about is Burke Hood has also been loaned back to his junior team. I would have liked him to get an a preseason game. It is disappointing that they didn't put him in last night instead of a guy like Rittich. Because again, it would have been nice for him to get a game too. It's looking early on like he's going to be the only player that doesn't get a single game. And you feel bad for the kid, especially because I do like a lot of what Burke Hood brings in the net. He does have to work on some things positionally, but I think this is an interesting pick for the Islanders, especially in the 6th round. Now, the last player we have to talk about in this preseason game is Maxim Tsyplakov, who perhaps did not have the explosive first game that some people were expecting. In fact, on Twitter, Flyers fans were absolutely dogging him, saying, oh, see, we don't need him. He's not that impressive. And they are going to be wrong on this. While Tsyplakov didn't have an explosive game, a lot of the signs that he is an explosive player were visible, in my opinion. And what really impressed me about his play yesterday is he took some physical hits. While he didn't win some puck battles that you would like to see him win, he was not afraid to get involved. And he's going to learn more about board battles the more he plays NHL hockey in an NHL rink. Keep in mind, he's not used to playing on a rink that size, but he did not shy away from the physicality. He actually threw a couple hits here and there, giving it back, and he was not afraid to get the front of the net. And there were certain times, especially in the second half of the game, I felt as the game went on, Tsyplakov got better. You would notice he was getting these flashes where he got the puck and he took a few quick steps. That offensive skill is there. He had that really cool behind the back deke. Going to see more of that as he continues to get more comfortable. Again, this is a highly talented player. He also had some really strong passes. I think Tsyplakov is going to be just fine, and I'm really excited to see what he does in the top 6. I will note the way he plays. I think there needs to be a change. I think he should be playing with Mathew Barzal instead. I think they complement each other better. Was not super impressed with the top 6's production overall in this game. And again, that's not a concern. The point of the preseason is not for your top 6 to dominate. But would like to see some better looks. I do have a little concern with Mathew Barzal playing with 2 slower players, and I wonder if that's a shift. That's something that Patrick Waugh is considering. That being said, if you look at the advanced stats too, when it came to these players, Maxim Tsyplakov was considered to be the 3rd most effective Islander in that game. And that does pass the eye test. Also, shout out to Mathew Schaefer for also being very high on this chart. He did a lot right. You would like to see I think if Tsyplakov had gotten an assist in this game, people would be talking about it a lot differently. He did a lot right, but it just did not generate anything in this game. And that's going to happen. But I was still impressed with what he showed. I think he is going to be a very effective NHL player this year, along with Mathew Schaefer. Let me know what you thought about this preseason game. Were there any other players who stood out to you? I think Warren was also impressive and really earned a potential spot as a player who gets called up when inevitably injuries happen to the Islanders defense. But I'd love to know who you really noticed in this preseason game in the comments below. As always, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. I'm your host, Patrick Nilan. Catch you on the next episode of Islanders Digest. Let's go, Islanders.